Hey,
Getting closer.
all right. Am I good to go?
Yes,
All right.
Mike is on there.
All right, we're gonna call the Thursday, August 4th, Planning Commission meeting to order. Would staff call the roll, please?
Corey,
Here.
Randy is excused absent. Nancy,
Here.
Sarah,
Here.
Reed,
Here.
Lisa,
Here.
and Dusty.
I'm here, thank you. First item on the agenda is approval of the June 22nd meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thanks, Corey. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, corrections, changes? Hearing none. Leo, will you call the roll for the vote?
Lisa,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Nancy,
Here.
Corey,
Yes.
Dusty.
Yes.
Yes, I meant yes. Sorry.
We know.
Making progress, Tiffany.
There we go. So the next item on the agenda is approval. See, now I have to scroll all the way back up here. Approval of the July 21st meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve the July 21st meeting minutes.
Thanks, Nancy. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Corey. Do we have any questions, corrections, or changes there? Yeah.
There was discussion by you, Dusty, about the voting issue for the different, the multifamily
Right.
and the single family, and that's not reflected in the minutes. And I think
No,
that's,
and I didn't really expect it to be. That was a recommendation, not a requirement or anything. It just, I didn't expect to see that in
in the minutes. I wasn't thinking it was a recommendation, but I thought it might be an important thing to have in the minutes. But if you don't think so, then
I,
fine with me.
ultimately it's their call, so.
Okay.
And I had a typo on page 8. In Carlos's. And I'm trying to remember where it was. Oh, it's in the motion where it says individual site specific geotechnical reports for, instead of teach, it should be each.
Got it.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything? Okay, hearing none, will staff call the roll for a vote?
Nancy,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Sarah,
Same.
Dusty.
Yes. Okay. Next item on the agenda is a subdivision preliminary plan continuation for Hunter Ridge. So Carlos, are you gonna introduce this or?
Yes, I can.
Yep, thank you.
We, at our last meeting, we had a lengthy discussion on the application. The planning commission directed staff to put together a motion for a recommendation to the town council. The staff did that, and it is reflected on staff report starts on page 11 of your packet. And the actual motion starts on page 12. Bottom of page 12, under recommendation to town council. There is one comment regarding the feeder road and I believe 11 conditions after that. So total of 12 items. So hopefully I captured everything that was the intent of the planning commission. And I can hand it back over to you.
I would query the commission to see if they had questions for staff on this motion. Corey, any questions from you?
Nope.
Nancy?
Yes, I'd like, on number 11. I'd like to see a better reflection of what was discussed during the meeting and recommendations that were given. I think
And what recommendations? would that be?
Specifically, the bullet number 2, under the recommendations. Geotechnical engineer of record, Daniel Lambert, will meet with civil engineer of record to provide a drainage report, erosion control report, and other slope stability mitigation measures designed to industry standards prior to submittal of plan. A written report will be provided and reviewed by the geotechnical engineer to address the concerns of the planning commission, as stated in items 2, 7, and 11. There's no mention of a drainage report or an erosion control report or a written report provided by Lambert that would detail the results of the meeting between the geotechnical engineer and the civil engineer. I mean, in other words, how do we know that this meeting has happened and what were the recommendations or findings of that meeting unless a written report or approval letter is given, and that the drainage was discussed or the erosion control was discussed or the final road plan was discussed.
So 11, just kind of with added language that states, a report or a letter from the geotechnical engineer.
Yes.
Supplied that these items were addressed,
Yes,
kind of like a review letter.
yes.
Yeah.
And this would be prior to consideration of the final plan.
That's applied to staff.
Yes, because that would be prior to consideration before we consider the planning, when we see the final plan.
You will not see final plan.
Oh, we don't. Okay, then I guess that would be to the staff.
Well, it'd be to the staff, and you could ask for it to be part of, it would be anyway, but you could ask for it to be part of the meeting packet materials for council to show that they have met that condition.
That work for you, Nance?
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
I had a little bit of housekeeping with the maps. And I don't know that that would be in recommendation or not. But for example, Exhibit 8 shows, still shows building envelopes, which my understanding is there aren't building envelopes. And then those building envelopes have been transposed on most of the other ones as dashed lines, and they're still there. And then there are solid boxes on other maps that are kind of confusing because I don't believe they represent building envelopes.
I think what we could do for that is adjust number 5 to say all drawings shall be adjusted to show, the current plan, including the new feeder road design approved by the planning commission prior to town.
And the driveways is because the site plan shows the old driveways.
I think maybe that could be, massage that language in number 5 to include that.
Oh, okay.
That'd be maybe the easiest way to do that.
And I believe there was a discussion about a letter from the Mount Crested Butte Water and Sand, an email or something that.
We're not gonna get anything from the water. I've asked
No,
multiple times, they
fine.
don't respond. You can hear my frustration.
Yeah, I can.
I was told I was going to, they would respond to my email. I
Yeah.
sent it twice and asking, please respond either way, even if you're not going to respond. Mike is out of town this week, but this dates back before he was gone, and I don't anticipate getting anything from the water district. They're probably going to say that letter that they've submitted is the letter that they're going to stand by.
Maybe the council will have a little bit better effect. I don't know.
Okay, and then I guess this would also fall under item number 5, is that the rendering would show, even though it may not show, but I would like it included, the retaining wall on Road A, now that we have actually seen it, the plans of it. I'd like that put into the rendering, and it may not show up, but I would like it there. And I would also like to know the viewpoint from which the rendering was taken on Gothic Road.
When you say show it on the rendering.
Included in the rendering, so it may or may not appear. But I know the other 2 retaining walls have been included in the rendering and they don't show up. But I would like this retaining wall also included in the rendering, and it may or may not show up.
Got it. To show it, even if it might show that it doesn't. it's
Yeah,
not-
and that would be great.
Yeah.
So we can be confident that it's not going to be seen.
Okay. Sarah?
I just have one thing that I pointed out, number 7 references section 1.28 of the declaration, but it's a typo in the declaration. That it should be 2.28 or 2.27 and 2.28. So, the reference is correct. The deck has a typo.
Okay,
So whoever
so
makes the motion, I think we need to.
correct that.
Well, when the covenant is updated and corrected, the reference will be correct. Right?
Well, the reference is correct now.
Right.
So when it's updated, the numbering of the deck is correct.
Right, which
Okay.
would correspond with that. So I don't think you really need to change that motion.
Okay.
Or that.
So are those covenants going to be updated prior to council saying preliminary plan?
Should be.
Maybe there's a way to
You can add that. You can add-
reference the fact that the
And you can
numbering
add
is
that
wrong.
in, you know, prior to consideration of preliminary plan by town council.
Okay. Read.
Okay.
But do you have anything to add?
Thanks for asking.
Lisa,
I have.
I have one thing on 12. I think the discussion that we were having was really for the trees on the west side of the road, not all trees. And I mean, I can't see how accurate the mapping is, but it looks like those 2 end lots are probably going to have to remove some trees just to get onto the lot.
When looking at that, I think this is not what it says, of course, but what I think I meant to say was easement prohibiting the removing of existing groves of aspen trees on that aren't on the individual lots. I think is what I meant to say in the open.
If that's,
Or
if
the-
that's the easiest typo to fix that.
No,
Yeah.
that doesn't work either,
Yeah.
because on lots 2 and 3, there are aspen trees that are on the lots that if you remove them, that would really
They sit below, those sit below the road.
they sit
too.
directly below downslope of road.
Yeah. Road and drainage. Got those ponds.
I don't.
Dissipators below the road. Does that work? Yeah, so. Well,
But anyways, we got to allow for a little bit for those stream meters there also, but everything downhill from that, I would say.
so what's the easiest way to identify the groves that we're trying? Is it below the road?
And
That would be the way I would word it.
Okay.
road and drainage. I'd have room for them below the road. They're only, I think, 12 feet wide. So they don't-
Okay,
You guys are making the motion, so I've got the notes on it,
I
but
got the
if
notes.
you need help.
So as
Sarah's
amended,
probably writing away too, so.
she's writing furiously, tinily as well.
It's on the list maker.
You are, and you're very good at it. And I thank you for that. Do you have a motion, or does anybody else have any questions?
Okay. Do I have to read this whole thing? All right, I move to recommend to the town council the approval of the Hunter Ridge subdivision preliminary plan with the following comments and conditions. One, pursuant to section 21914, planning commission grants a feeder road modification based on the following findings. The reduced turning radii have been approved by the Crested Butte Fire Protection District. The reduced turning radii have met Crested Butte Fire Protection District standards. The reduced turning radii keeps the fill slopes to a minimum and prevents development from extending further down the hillside, and the reduced turning radii diminishes the extent of the road construction impacts. Two, all units within the subdivision shall be required to be equipped with an automatic fire suppression system. Do we need to add and monitored, or they are?
Well, we don't require community housing units to be monitored, so that's why that was not included. If you want to put that in, that would just, it would. The reason it was excluded is for that reason.
Okay.
So I'm not saying it doesn't, if you put that in, it means exactly what it means, but the only reason it wasn't included is because it's a code requirement generally for a system to be monitored other than for community housing units.
Okay, then it's fine. It's a code requirement. The Crested Butte Fire Protection District shall review and approve engineered water supply plans prior to consideration of a final subdivision plan. A licensed agreement between the town and the applicant shall be submitted as part of final plan, and its execution shall be a condition of final plan approval. All drawings and renderings shall be adjusted to show the current plan, feeder road design, driveways, and retaining walls approved by the planning commission prior to consideration of the town council. The final plat shall label the feeder road as a public access easement. Sections 1.28 and 10.5 of the covenants shall be changed to be specific to the limitations for HOA dues and special assessments prior to consideration of preliminary plan by the town council. The covenants shall be amended to remove any reference to design guidelines. Any specific design guidelines desired by the applicant should be incorporated into the covenants and shall be more stringent than the requirements of the town. The town council shall consider placing limitations on short-term rentals in the subdivision covenants. If incorporated, any amendments to the covenants to this limitation shall require approval of the town council. That site-specific geotechnical reports shall be required for any new construction. Each report shall address slope stability, site drainage, and foundation design. The report shall be based on test borings, period. Test pits shall not be permitted as a primary slope of analysis. This requirement should be incorporated into the HOA declaration of covenants. Civil and geotechnical engineers of record shall discuss and evaluate the final road plan to ensure that it meets industry standard best practices, mitigation measures as it relates to site drainage, erosion control, overall slope stability, and other conditions as deemed appropriate by the engineers. A written report shall be supplied to staff and part of town council packet. And the final plat shall show an easement prohibiting the removal of the existing groves of aspen trees that are on individual lots located below the road that are not part of the drainage design.
Thanks. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Corey. Is there discussion on the motion?
Just one thing, the written report should be submitted by the geotechnical engineer.
Okay. Written report submitted by the geotechnical engineer
Mhm.
shall be supplied to staff and part of the town council packet.
You guys got that?
Just in 10, I think you just misspoke there. I don't remember the word you used, but should be test pit shall not be permitted as the primary source of analysis.
What did I say?
Something different.
Slopes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So corrected.
yes.
All right. Anybody else? We have a motion. Will staff call the roll?
Lisa,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Dusty.
Yes.
Second that one.
Corey did.
Okay.
The motion is approved. And thank you. So our next item on the agenda is a PUD major alteration continuation of the new planned unit development major alteration application submitted by North Village Associates. I'm not going to read all the rest of that stuff. Hillary.
Get the team in real quick.
Yeah,
Oh, they are here.
they were trying not to interrupt the last item, so
Good staff report, by the way.
thank you.
Thank you.
I can actually say this without the team being here, so you probably noticed that I've taken a completely different approach to how we typically draft staff reports. And I am welcoming and encouraging any feedback, both positive, negative, neutral, regarding this approach, because if it's something that you like to see, especially in these larger applications, I won't say that we'll go to this level of detail for, other types of applications. It's not necessarily required, but for something of this magnitude, I felt like it broke it down into slightly more digestible pieces. So hopefully it works. So with us is Heather Henry of Connect One Design. She
Welcome back.
is, you all know her, but for everybody else in the room and online, and Claudio Alvarez and his lovely wife are also here. They are the owners of the project, and I don't see Crockett, but he's around here somewhere. Excellent. We have food on the way. That way we make it through this, so. Shot the way there, great. Out of the way. So. I think the first thing that we'll go ahead and.
I'm sorry, is there a way to angle that a little bit more for the planning commission? That probably messes up the audience, but that's much better.
We've seen it. Intimately.
So however far you want.
That's better. That's good. I think.
Thank you.
All right, so I think the most important thing to start off with is that the project name has been changed. So just want to let you all know that I'm going to be referring to this project as the Village at Mount Crested View. The applicant is still the same, it's North Village Associates, but they're looking to take a different direction with the project name. So I will probably mess that up throughout this presentation, but I will try to hold true to that. All right. So there's been a drastic, not really a drastic shift, but a significant shift in this project with regard to the last time y'all saw it in February. That was my first planning commission meeting, and I hadn't been to any meetings previously. So if there's something that you recall from a meeting that was in 2021, please be kind, because I probably don't remember or have knowledge of it. Anyway. So the overall programming will include the Rumble campus, as y'all are aware, a visitor center, a year-round multimodal transportation or trail system, a civic site intended for town facilities, the potential for a 100-unit boutique hotel, a variety of residential types and mixed-use development. This is a compact development centered around a village core, where mixed use development density are concentrated in the center, and these the density decreases as you get away from the village core. One of the things that the applicant heard was regarding showing how this relates to our existing zoning districts and within each tract. So they created their own kind of zone districts, for lack of a different word, within each tract to kind of demonstrate what the uses and the densities would look like in each one. So you can see that the mixed use development with the most dense residential development is again around that village core. And then medium density tracts are going to be your more townhome type tracts and row homes, et cetera. And those are to the outside. That blue tract in the middle there is tract 10, which is potentially reserved for civic use. The tract, I can't quite see that, tract 8 is, which includes the West Trade parcel, is low density residential, so single family residential, and I think maximum of 10 homes on that particular site. The light green tract is again the Rumble campus, and then tract 3 is for transit use, and tract 1 is for supporting transit use and parking, a number of other things that we'll get into greater detail. They have concentrated this into kind of the bottom of the bowl, where this development is being proposed, to decrease the visual impacts that could sprawl against the hillside, keeping that in lower density to reduce those visual impacts. And then there would be, again, the visitor center and the transit parcels be situated on Gothic Road adjacent to the rec path. And there would be this commuter trail, which we will get to, that will allow for circulation within the project and connecting to the rec path. I'm going to pause for a quick moment if anybody has any questions so far, because I know there's a lot to digest and I don't want to just rapid fire everything at you. Yes. This is on the staff presentation.
254.
It's B, or depending on how you're pulling it up.
So I'd sent out this document earlier today, but over time, this development proposal has decreased the number of units. And in 1985, it was around 1,900 residential units and almost 200,000 square feet of non-residential floor area. In 2001, and part of the annexation agreement were 1,800 residential units, and then a part of their approvals were about 450,000 square feet of non-residential floor area. Then fast forward to the most current proposal, initially requested 900 units, a reduction of half from that 2001 figure. And then 134,000 square feet of commercial floor area. And then they've amended this proposal to drop that down to 342 units, up to 382 units, should the accommodation units not be established on the lodge lot. And we'll get into that a little bit further, but to break it down as simply as possible, if there's no hotel, there will be 40 residential units, and that's only affecting one lot. So there's no tracking of it within the rest of the development. It has to be tracked in that one lot. It's pretty easy. You either get a hotel or you get the potential for up to 40 residential units. At the Rumble campus, they're proposing about 25, or they're proposing a maximum 25,000, square feet of gross commercial floor area. And then dormitory, 40 dormitory units to help support the Rumble operations. The 40 dormitory units are being proposed in lieu of the 17 commercial housing units that are required as part of the annexation agreement, and town council would need to approve that proposed amendment. The visitor center would not have, I had a little typo in my presentation here, would have about 10,500 square feet of gross floor area. Civic space would be, again, on track 10 would be limited to 8,500 gross square feet. And then the general commercial, so in that village core, we're looking at about 90,000 potential gross floor area units there. My apologies, I'm really hot, so if I'm stumbling over my words, that's why. so any questions on the density and floor area summary at this time? Nancy?
I think I read somewhere that if the town chooses not to use the civic space, then that's an additional 21 residential units that will be used in that space. Is that correct?
I would have to get to that slide, but I forget the exact number, but
But that's, so that would be in addition to the 342 or 382 units. Okay,
thank you, Heather.
okay.
I remember this. I can remember that exact detail. There's a lot of details in this application.
And I just want to go on the record of saying that there was also a 2006 amendment to the North Village PUD that dropped the unit count to 1175 and only 68,000 square feet of commercial space. It's not in this memo.
Thank you for that. Great.
So in your chart that you handed out, does your developable acres include the required 100-foot wetland setback? So is
So
that how
there-
you're getting to that?
100-foot wetland setback is actually not a requirement unless there are fens on the property, and there are not. So there are 50-foot setbacks for all the wetlands, and that was considered when coming up with that developable area, as noted in footnote number 2. It should, I'm sorry, the number 1. Sorry, I would think that number 2 should have said that, but the developable area does exclude any wetland buffer area. So there's no development being proposed in, no structures. We'll get to the wetlands, in a moment. I don't want to jump ahead.
Okay,
But yes, it did consider that. You're welcome. Anybody else? All right, moving along. So I'm just gonna go high level over each track that was described in the PUD guide. So I'll pause at the end for any questions, and I'm just gonna run through these numbers for everybody's edification. So tract 1 is a parcel that is adjacent to Gothic Road. This is designated for public use in a visitor center. There could be up to 2 residential units, and those units are not to exceed 3,000 square feet in total. So about 1,500 per unit, depending on the needs of the transit center, because those would be to support that particular use. There would be a total of 10,500 square feet of commercial, and then STRs would not be permitted on this tract. Any questions there? Excellent. Before I get too far down the road, I do want to note that 4 parcels will be vacated as part of the lot line adjustment, reducing the overall number of parcels in the PUD from 19 to 15 parcels. And any concerns about a landlocked parcel have been absolved in this amended application. So, which is why we're jumping now to tract 3, because tract 2 has been removed from the project. So tract 3 is proposed to be medium density residential, up to 3,400 residential units. I'm sorry.
Wow.
My brain works really well when I'm hot.
You add zeros, don't you?
I just love density, I guess. So 34 residential units not to exceed 68,000 gross square feet.
Can we get a fan?
And there are no commercials permitted on this tract, nor are there going to be any STRs on this tract. The development is relatively compact, and all of the site planning, all of the residential units need to be contained within what is shown on the site plan. So thank you so much. So there's a little bit of latitude with regard to how much floor area can be in a given unit. To say that there are some duplex style units or townhome style units, they can play with that density to meet market demands. But the site plan wouldn't change in relationship to what is being proposed today. And if there were any changes to the site plan, we would need to come back through some sort of PUD alteration process. Any questions at this point? Thank you so much. All right. All right, on to track 4. This is very similar to track 3. It's medium density residential, limited to 30 units, not to exceed 60,000 square feet. No commercial uses, no STRs. Any questions? Great. Now on to track 5. This is the northernmost of the 2 tracks that are along Gothic Road. This is designated for public use / transit. It's intended to support transit uses and provide additional recreational amenities and parking. No residential units or uses would be permitted on this lot. No commercial uses would be permitted, and STRs wouldn't apply because there are no houses to rent out. Any questions? Let's see.
Bless you. Would paid parking be considered a commercial use? That's, you don't have to answer that.
That probably needs to be answered though at some point.
Yeah, something.
That might be a final design
Yeah.
kind of element, but I think we can. I don't think we have that listed in our commercial definition.
I don't think so.
Track 6 is the Rumble campus. There is a 40-unit dorm being proposed on this site that will be, and there's 80,000 square feet of gross floor area allocated to the residential uses and the dorm. So there needs to be a bit of a shift within the PUD guide to allocate some density to this tract, because right now there are no residential units, but residential is allowed, residential units beyond the dorm floor units, to be clear. We've asked that the applicant amend the PUD guide to make sure that if we want to realize some housing for maybe visiting faculty, that we're able to land both some community housing units to offset any commercial generation, and then of course the residential component. STRs are requested to be permitted, and I've asked the applicant to explain exactly what that means, but Rumble wanted that as part of the overall programming. And then the commercial would be limited to 25,000 square feet. Staff has requested a plan for this particular tract because there has been conversations over time, and the Planning Commission is also, I believe, requested that plan as well. Again, I don't believe it was a part of those meetings. So that request was submitted to the applicant, and they noted that due to the stalled nature of the application, that Rumble had not really moved forward on their plans for this particular tract. It looks like you all have some questions, so love to take those at this time.
Sarah gets to go first.
Well, 40 dormitory units divided into 80,000 square feet is 2,000 square feet a unit. And that sounds like a really big dorm room that I never had in college.
Yeah, that's much larger than my condo. So I hear what you're saying. That is the floor area that's allocated to all residential uses on this lot. We just don't have residential units that have been allocated. So we have the floor area. We just need some units to be moved over to this particular tract from somewhere else in order to help land or either adjust the total number of units that are allowed in the PUD. Does
That
make sense?
confuses me.
No,
Well, there's not just 40 dorm units. There are additional something, because the dorm units are not going to be able to be used as STRs.
So does that
No.
include common areas?
So the 80,000 square feet again is for all residential uses, including houses, just like single family homes, townhomes, row homes, that sort of thing.
Right.
And there was not an allocation for those uses. So what you think of as, normal
So
residential
that
uses.
80,000 gets divided.
Yes, it's not just for the dorm,
Okay.
because those would be palatial.
I think in cleaning it up, we Carlos and I had gone through and we'll start calling them 40 dormitory bedrooms, because then there's a calculation in the community housing guidelines that turn those into units. So 40 dormitory bedrooms equal 17 dwelling units. And then we'll add additional just residential units that they could do as townhomes or something that would add some of that, like visiting
Yeah, and
professor housing.
if I were to guess, the reason why Rumble is requesting that STRs be permitted is because they do have a lot of visiting staff and professors from other places that are just there for 2 weeks, and so they wouldn't be renting a unit for a long-term basis.
That makes sense, but the dorm units, if they equal to 17 community housing, they can't be short-term.
They would, if they were used for the community housing component, that is correct. They would not be able to be short-term rented because we don't allow for short-term rentals. I imagine that those would just be used as seasonal for the staff there, the scientists that stay there
Okay.
for good
Nancy?
research season.
So for community housing, I sort of think of a community rather than just Rumble employees. So maybe this is something that the town council will bring up, but I don't think that that's equivalent to providing 17 units to the community. Dormitories that are run by Rumble for Rumble employees
Well, I think the idea initially was
for
that they also
seasonal
get
workers.
shared with maybe Scary employees or others.
Yes.
And I think that is a conversation that the council is really going to want to do a deep dive into to make sure that they operate as employee housing units as close to year round as possible.
And it doesn't include the potentially 88 other community housing units that would have to be built in that community.
Yeah, I understand that, but they were obligated to have 17
Yeah.
community housing units up front before anything else got built or before anything else was done. So those additional, we have 80,000 gross residential floor area. So in addition to the 40 dormitory units, would those additional units be in addition to the 342 units? No, that we would never exceed 342. Okay.
Anybody else?
For the track 6, do you guys have any ideas where you would take, if you were to put townhomes or some additional type lodging for professors and whatnot? Do you have any idea which tracks you would take those from? Does that make sense?
That's all on track 6.
I think the question is that in the PUD guide, there are 40 dormitory units, but we don't have a number of residential units that would be permitted.
40 dormitory bedrooms, that the square footage of a dormitory bedroom, 40 of them equals 17 units.
Right.
So, like pretend 17 times 2,000 is the square footage. Let me do enough head math, is the square footage 34,000. 34,000?
Did I ask?
I would
Where are
guess,
you trying
that-
to
I would guess that an apartment with 4 bedrooms would be closer to 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, I mean, so right now, the community housing guidelines have this definition for a dormitory.
Right.
And so when you put those together as bedrooms, it equals, and that was how the original math for 40 dormitory bedrooms happened, was long ago, having a conversation about the 17 units, could we do them as Rumble, as these like seasonal dormitory? So that calculation was like all done, and that's already codified in the community housing guidelines. So what we need to clarify is just, that's not 80,000 square feet, right? That's only 34,000 square feet, and then we'll do an equivalent number of dwelling units, if that makes sense.
But they've got to come out of that 342.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
none
what I
of
was
this is
asking.
above and beyond.
That's what I was asking, because somebody just said right now, there's no residential for RMBL visiting professors. There is for the students, right? The dormitory bedroom
I'm
thing.
getting to the page in the PUD guide that'll help explain this a little bit more
It's gonna
clearly.
all come out of the allocation of square footage that you already see on track 6. Nothing's gonna increase.
So it isn't the floor area that's the question, it's the unit count that's
Yeah,
the question,
so let's
and
say-
so. I'm gonna reshare my screen, give me just a moment, and I will pull up. Page that describes, so right now, okay. Not everybody can see this, but for each given tract, the residential density is defined in the PUD guide. And in this, for this particular tract, there were 40 units, which are the 40 dormitory units, and then 80,000 square, or I'm sorry. Were you saying 40 bedrooms?
Yeah, so the 80,000 won't change. What we should do is make sure we allocate 40 dormitory bedrooms and 23 dwelling units. And that will
Yeah,
equal
it-
80,000 square feet.
And the question that Lisa has is that the 23 units.
Where are they coming?
Where are they coming from if those units have already been allocated in other areas of the proposal?
Okay, so they're not, so 40 units breaks up into 23 dwelling units and 17 units. 17 units equals 40 dormitory bedrooms.
I think I understand now. So I appreciate you. Perhaps it's something that could be cleaned up in the PUD guide. So. The 40 units is actually the number of residential units that are allocated to this lot. And using the bedroom math, there are 40 dormitory bedroom units plus 23 residential units, and that gets to 40 units.
40 equals 17,
Plus 21.
plus 23.
Great,
So
sorry.
23 plus 17 equals 40.
Yes.
So nothing
Got
in the rest of the PUD would increase.
And it's not coming from anywhere else. It's all.
It's already there.
It's already there.
It's like just clarifying how the 80,000 is allocated. So
It's a new math.
Anything else?
Not,
Okay. Read. No. So I just want to plant a seed for the staff that now that we're running rapidly down the concept of having dormitory rooms as employee housing, we probably need to work through a parking requirement for that sooner rather than later.
For dormitory style.
Yeah.
And we will get to this a little bit further down the presentation, but the plan, the proposal does include, sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once. It's not working out for me. It does intend to memorialize the existing the existing parking requirements. So, and because they came in under that code, amending the code to align with dormitory uses in a different generation rate, it wouldn't apply to this project. It would apply to any future project, but we can't retroactively apply a new adopted code to a project.
Well, we did
That's
that,
already
we did that for dormitories. We already have.
I'm not.
We
sure.
did that for dormitories for this project. But that's neither here nor there. I just want parking to be considered as part of, and do you see what I'm saying? I mean, we changed the code to allow for dormitories for this project.
So was that before or after?
We, as part of these discussions, we added a definition for what a dormitory style unit is. And the definition they use in their PUD is taken directly from that definition. It was before it was in the application process, but it was part of those discussions. And to further that discussion, there was a work session held with the council some time back where it was discussed with, as Heather mentioned too, would they be willing to consider being able to meet their 17 unit obligation through a dormitory style unit, and the town council said, yes, they would be willing to consider that. to meet that obligation.
And I don't know whether the current parking requirements are even appropriate for dormitory style housing. That's the question, really. Is it too much? Is it too little?
Sure.
Or is it just right? I don't know.
Right, well,
I think Dusty's question is a bigger question
yeah, it is.
beyond this.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah.
kind of
Absolutely,
plant a seed.
seed
Sure.
plan.
I just.
I got it.
Noted, and,
Yes.
are there any other questions on track 6 or any policy level concerns? All right.
There you go.
So tract 7 is just below the Rumble parcel. And it is proposed to be medium density residential. With a maximum of 18 residential units, not to exceed 36,000 square feet of floor area. No commercial uses, no STRs. Any questions on track 17? Or 7? Doing great. All right, so tract 8 is the largest tract in, the largest development tract, within the, proposal. This is the low density residential, lot that also includes a portion of the West Trade parcel. There are no more than 10 single-family residential units, not to exceed 40,000 square feet of floor area. There are no commercial uses and no STRs that would be permitted on this tract. Do we have any questions on tract 8? Wonderful. Tract 10, this is one that's taken a little bit of a shift since the February meeting. With the leadership changes at Town Hall and subsequent meetings that we have had with the applicant. The conversation around having a potential some sort of civic use, particularly with regard to a town hall, is back on the table for consideration. So the applicant has designated this tract for public or civic use not to exceed 8,500 square feet of floor area. That would, and this lot would revert to residential if not developed for that civic use. So essentially the town has first right of refusal for this particular lot. And so if we were to decline that, the use of the parcel, the tract would revert to residential use with a density of 21 units, not to exceed 42,000 square feet of gross floor area. Do we have any questions on tract 10?
Yeah. Is there a possibility of community housing on that? As not in maybe addition to
In addition to the
town hall?
town hall use, so one of the things that I had noted in my conversations with the applicant is that currently. Community housing is not a permitted use if it is used as a town hall, and we've requested that we do have the ability to have. Community housing there to offset the FTEs generated from that particular use, and I can let the applicant speak more to that if they'd like. Heather's just giving a thumbs up, so. Yes, and we just need to adjust that in the PUD guide. We
Yeah.
figured that was a detail that we could sort out through this process.
Right.
I believe that's in the conditions as well. If I
Right,
recall
it
correctly.
was.
Great,
Am I correct in understanding that if it was reverting in those 21 units? Am I correct that that's still included in the 342 total?
yes.
Okay.
Okay. Tract 14 is at the heart of the village center. It's literally in the middle of the village loop. This is proposed to be mixed use around a little community courtyard. It's the densest, it's one of the densest parcels, but keep in mind that that density is associated with higher density style development. So think more like not houses, but apartments would be in this area, condos. with a commercial component, at the ground floor activating that space. There would be up to 55 residential units permitted on this parcel, not to exceed, 110,000 square feet. And 35,000 square feet of commercial floor area. STRs would be permitted on this tract. Are there any questions with regard to tract 14? Reed, you look like you have a question.
No, I'm just trying to find the right page.
Nancy does.
Nancy.
I noticed in the description of what would be permissible under commercial, and there's a theater in there, and I'm just wondering how parking would be accommodated with a theater.
So the commercial uses would be subject to, so they're, because they are seeking to codify vest themselves into the existing parking code. It would be whatever the commercial parking generation would be associated with that. I think another important thing to notice on this tract, because you'll notice that there's not really any surface parking, is that the parking would be located in a parking structure. So it would just be based on that commercial floor area generation and served by transit.
So if a theater of a certain size with a certain number of seats was proposed, the parking has to come with it.
It would be based on the floor area of the theater. So basically, you could do the calculation on that 35,000 square feet. Right now, there are X number of parking spaces generated by commercial floor area, so that would be the maximum parking requirement for this tract.
That's very different than, say, like a clinic or an office space. I mean, you have 100, 200 people, 300 people even going into a theater all at once.
You
And
don't have a special parking.
you don't.
We just don't have that in our
Requirement,
code, so we
yeah.
don't have a code-based reason to request additional parking for that use.
But the theater downtown didn't either. That's a PUD, and they assumed that most of the people coming for the theater would be coming when the grocery store is virtually empty. Well, the theater hasn't been open for 3 years.
But
We'll see.
it will be, hopefully.
Some stripes on the parking lot, couldn't hear.
Any other questions, or does the applicant wish to clarify any statements that I've
Yeah.
made? Okay, great.
Covered it.
Great. All right. So tract 15 is another tract that is accessed off the village loop. It's to the south. This is the hotel parcel. So initially, so forgive me if I do not know the prior application as well as you all did. I made a point to get intimately familiar with this one instead. I believe that the hotel use was kind of a floating potential use. Now it is designated only for tract 15. And if this tract were not developed as a hotel, it would revert to residential use. So a similar situation as the civic tract. So this is where that either or, so up to 382 residential units could be realized should the 100 accommodation units not be built. And either one of these uses would be limited to a total of 80,000 square feet. So that's either 80,000 square feet for the hotel use or 80,000 square feet for 40 residential units. There would be an additional 20,000 square feet of commercial allowed at this site. And STRs would be permitted in either instance of development. Is there any questions on this particular tract? That's the, I'll let you.
Sarah.
Is there any accommodation for, if it's 50 hotel
My
rooms,
question.
how many, is it still only? Are there,
Can you mix
My
it up?
understanding that it's up to, and that if the hotel is not built, it reverts to residential, but I'll let the applicant speak to that.
I wasn't sure I understood.
well, could there be a combination of a smaller hotel, 100-room hotel and 20 residential, or
Two.
That would be nice.
is it either or?
Well, right now, like for instance, we're staying.
Claudia, can you please speak in the microphone? Sorry.
Like for now, we're staying at the Elk Lodge and I think it has 16 rooms. That's a good question. I mean, I think that would be something nice to have there if a 80-room hotel is not done. So the flexibility, I think the question is just the total amount of square foot. As long as we don't exceed something like that, then we should have the flexibility to do what the community would need.
So we should probably make a note then in the PUD guide to.
Yes, I read the PUD guide. It was an either or scenario.
Right.
And what I'm hearing from the applicant is that they would wish to have a little bit of latitude using that 80,000 square feet to have some programming that meets market demand and community need. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or a combination not to exceed 80,000 square feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think there's the Condotel model that might,
But then you'd have to know that you were gonna build X number of accommodation units first before you built the residential units. I mean, it
Well,
sort
it
of
would
a,
just, it would take away from the amount that you could build with a hotel. It's going to either, if you
like
started
chicken and
building
egg
residential-
thing.
Well, if you started with a residential and you put whatever you even could, put 20 units on it, then that wipes out
About
that amount of square footage. And so like the remainder would be left for the
for the hotel.
It's a fairly unlikely scenario, and I'm assuming that we would count whatever units did come out of those out of the total, the total allocable units for the whole site.
Well, it seems to be 40 residential equals 100 accommodation units, and then 20 would be 50, and you could easily.
Yeah.
they're nice whole numbers.
Yeah,
The
nice
math
whole
is
numbers.
easy.
Yeah, sliding math,
Yeah.
pretty easy.
My question was, there's a open space identified on this parcel next to the hotel. If it switched to residential, would that open space remain?
No, that's now dedicated as an open space easement.
So it would remain.
Yes. it
Yes.
would.
It's now shown as-
No, it would not go away.
Okay.
We're all in the same.
Everybody in here is too hot.
Yes, we designated.
The new town hall.
All right, so we're all clear that it's designated open space easement. All right. Any other questions, comments on 15? Lisa?
And that, excuse me, the open space would not take away from the developable acreage?
Been excluded from the developable acreage.
Already?
Yes.
Okay.
Track 16 is another village core parcel. It's to the west of the loop. This is designated to be medium density residential. There will be 84, up to 84 units on this site, not to exceed 168,000 square feet of floor area. There will be no commercial uses permitted on this parcel. However, STRs will be permitted. And I believe this contemplates having garage parking on this site. There's not a parking structure, correct?
Yeah, right. It's like a tuck under scenario, so. Like half surface, half tuck under the building.
And this is more where we'd see some of the townhome stacked flat type configurations where you have what you'd think of as more of our almost, I'm trying to think of a comparable development in town, but it's not.
Answer that place.
Answer site.
Answer site, yeah,
That was-
thank you.
Cause that's.
Couldn't think of the
tuck
name of
under
it. Yeah, thank you. Do we have any questions on track 16? These are easy, 17, 18, 19. These are your open space tracks. The use is permitted aligned with our existing code, so fairly straightforward. This, I think the total of these 3 tracks is like 100, or I'm sorry, not 168, 68 acres. It's 150 acres if you take into account all of the wetland buffers and everything else. That would be essentially open space in perpetuity. Are there any questions on the open space tracks that have been designated in this proposal?
Can a ground mounted solar array go in open space?
That is not indicated as an allowed use in our current code, so it has not been proposed in this application. It is conditional use on, I think, all of the parcels. there might be some exceptions to that, but I believe that solar is an allowed use. I don't know if it's specific to ground mounted solar though. I think it'd just be more like. Was it specific to
We
ground mounted?
left building mounted solar.
Yeah, building mounted solar, that's what I thought, because that would take up the developable area, which is something that I don't think the programming allows for. Anyone else? All right. Wonderful. We've gone over the density and floor area maximums that have been established for each tract. The development of each tract will fall within that footprint that you all see on the site plans, and then if we have, and it should say alteration, I did not change that everywhere. There would be a PUD alteration to change the site plan, because it in fact changed the PUD guide. The tract developers will be able to apply different unit types and mixed use floor area ratios as applicable on a given tract, provided that the building footprint doesn't change. So what this allows for is, if you have a residential building, again, you could have, say, if you had duplexes, a 2,000 square foot duplex and a 1,000 square foot duplex, or 1,500 square foot duplex units, etc. So it just allows for some flexibility in there. So what I've kind of come to terms with this is, it's like, it's really kind of like just creating little zone districts for each of these parcels. And then you get to apply those zoning regulations to the build out of a given tract. All of the individual tracts will be required to receive design review approval prior to development or site disturbance. So there would be another look at this by, it would either be at the administrative level or at the planning commission level review. Are there any questions on that, Sarah?
Well, we don't see single family homes, but we do see multi-family.
And most of
So,
it's multifamily, so you'd be seeing most of these.
okay,
Distinctions he was making between administrative with single family.
Yeah.
and
Yes.
planning
Yes.
and
Okay.
Everything else. Yep.
Yeah, and just one point of clarification on that, we're not talking about a literal box that's drawn on the plan. We obviously, everything has to fit within the setbacks and the FAR limitations and everything of the PUD guide, right? So whatever schematic squares that we have drawn on some of the illustrations, we're not being literal about that's the footprint, right? We're just gonna
Like you'd have
follow
a
the
sidewalk
PUD
that might come
guide.
somewhere else and bump outs and things like that. It's like a building envelope, right?
But that the setbacks would be an effective building envelope.
I mean, yeah,
This, would you want to answer?
No, go ahead.
In this, if I understand what you're saying correctly, in this presentation here, the building footprints or conceptual boxes you are showing on the plan, you are not beholden to those. What any structure will be judged against will be the zoning that you've established with each individual. Correct.
yes, great, okay. That's
That way gives you a.
site plan
judge
review
to
is
review
scary, 'cause
by.
it sounds like you were like site plan review and
Right.
it's all of these zoning.
It's a zoning
Yeah.
review. Yeah,
Yeah.
design review is what we call it.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
I have a
he's
question.
coloring over here.
I am coloring.
Just very, you know.
Get air conditioning.
Seriously.
Oh,
Hillary,
Reed does have a question.
I do have a question.
Yes, sorry.
So there was no slide for tract 11. So what's on tract 11?
Oops.
There's no track, yeah, I see what you're pointing out here.
oh, yeah, there is. I think there is a tract 11, I think.
There is a track.
You missed that.
I did miss that slide. I'm gonna stop sharing, and we'll just flip over to the beauty, grab my apologies.
Page 79.
See, one wasn't colored.
There was a method to it.
I'm
Very
fallible
remedial.
as a turn- Let me get
Visual
that.
learning.
Who knew?
I'm perfect. Hold on, I'm just trying to get my computer to stop backing up. Heather, what page did you say that was again?
79 in the PUD guy. Or 90, I don't know, the number is.
Yeah, I think is it the actual page or a PDF page number?
PDF page of our document, not your packet.
Bear with me. My apologies for getting a slide. Almost there. Very good.
Now we're cooling down.
Feels good, though.
Very
Yeah.
Control.
All right. So thank you for pointing that out. All right, we're live up there. Trying to reduce the size of it, that way we see a single page, but. A little slow. Let's just. There we are. Track 11 is the track that is on the east side of the village loop. This is another multi-use tract, that has, allowed commercial uses, that are more specific to serving neighborhood commercial uses, so, medical offices, professional offices, daycare center, convenience store, shipping center, place to get your haircut, coffee shops, restaurants, gyms, that sort of thing. That development will be limited to 35,000 square feet of commercial floor area. And then the residential density would be limited to 48 units, not to exceed 96,000 square feet. And again, this is one of the denser parcels, but all the density is concentrated more at the core. And then we get less dense as we move away from the, that village center. Are there any questions on parcel 11?
Color it in.
All right. Go back to my presentation. Bear with me as I get this to.
Before we move away from the tracks, I have a question.
Oh, for sure.
Is there a mechanism to move density around the tracks? So we're approving track 14 for 55 units. Can 5 of those units end up traveling to another site and the associated square footage?
It is my understanding that the answer to that is no,
Okay.
because that would be effectively back to where we were in this application.
Okay.
The density proposed and the floor area proposed is for a given tract. That an accurate interpret, I'm getting.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
It could, but it would only happen as part of.
Yeah, we
Major alteration,
Have to do an alteration.
Yes.
And would that be the same with the number of housing units that would be created for each area? Or would you be able to put affordable housing in other places?
Are you referring to the landing of the community housing units that would be required for residential development on a given tract?
Yeah, 88 units that are gonna happen at full build out. So for each tract, there's a certain number of affordable housing units that are gonna be required. Are they restricted to that track or can they be put somewhere else?
So our code currently allows for latitude in that, but my understanding is that they would all be on a tract where they were generated, so.
That's not,
No.
that's not.
I
how
would
it-
say they could be on an additional track. Hillary's more intimate with his application, but I would say that they could be on another track, provided that that tract allowed. You'd still have to meet the specifications of that track, so the track would have to meet, be allowed use for community housing or residential units, and then the proposed development must meet all those stipulations within that track, building height setbacks.
So the way we wrote the community housing plan was, no fee in lieu allowed and no off-site meaning outside.
Of the village?
Mount Crested, Mount Crested Village of Mount Crested View PUD. So I could build out my tract 11 and I needed to then do 20 community housing units, I could put them on tract 3.
Okay.
But they're all part of that 342.
Yeah.
They're not.
Somebody else might own tract 3.
You could.
Well,
Well, I
right,
mean,
then
that's-
obviously I can't. I mean,
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I won't force you to take my housing units, so. But the idea was that it could still mix. I will tell you that the values that we're looking at right now, and you'll see community housing pretty much allowed on all the tracks, is that we are looking to do, mixed income, mixed density and those kinds of things, like within each track, right? Not over there goes the community housing. And
Yeah, that's-
Claudio has been very clear on that, like he really, but that said, let's have a little bit of flexibility because we want to do some duplexes over here for community housing, but we don't want to do them on 16 because that's our highest density tract, or, that sort of thing. So that's how the housing plan is written right now. Nothing offsite and no fee in lieu.
And they have
Has
to
to
be
be.
produced prior to CO of the individual project too.
That's right.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. No.
Anything else? Resetting, you said you had a question on the tracks, was that the question about the tracks, or do you have an additional question? Okay, I just want to make sure that that was addressed. Yeah, and then, I'm not sure that this was mentioned, I know that Sarah briefly touched on it, but if the full build out were realized, there would be the calculation on the build out, if you include accommodation units, not the conversion to 40 residential units, total of 88 community housing units would be generated by the development. So we're going to take a little bit of a shift here and talk about alignment to existing adopted plans. So we are in the process of updating our master plan. This application did come in after before the master plan process was initiated. We do not have a new adopted plan. Therefore, this application is subject to the 2007 Mount Crested Butte Community Plan. I've asked the applicant to provide narrative responses to that plan and how it meets the various standards that are listed in or elements, I should say, that are listed in that particular plan. One thing I do want to note with regard to the current planning process is that there are certain documents that can be referenced. If we have a study or something like that, like that's new information that we can reference, but the actual plan itself is something that we cannot use because it's not an adopted regulatory document. So with regard to the community plan, there were several tenants in here, 7 specifically, that the applicant addressed in terms of how the application met or promoted arts, culture, and education, and responded to that they're establishing a year-round Rumble campus. It is something that Rumble would appreciate as being a year-round research facility, and due to the access issues on Gothic Road in the winter, would help promote education within Mount Crested Butte. Maintain or improving the level of public service and facilities. There are 3 designated public and civic use tracts. One that the town could potentially construct facilities on. Promoting economic sustainability. One of the things that we struggle with, and all mountain resort towns struggle with, is the lack of diversity in our economic base. With the type of neighborhood commercial uses that they're proposing, some more office uses and other things that serve locals. We feel that diversifies the mix of commercial offerings that we have, because most of what we have in the base area is frankly really targeted towards tourists, not the people that are sitting here in this room. Encouraging the provision of affordable housing. So this is now community housing. The applicant is encouraging public-private partnerships to allow for more community housing on a given tract, so above and beyond what is required by code. They've also community housing is permitted on almost all the tracks, of course, except for this, the one of the tracks and then the open space tracks, I believe. So they're encouraging, affordable housing in that regard. Preserve and connecting parks, I think they've done a really good job of, providing a trail system that connects into the Snodgrass system, and then also having a year-round trail network and transit system that allows for more multimodal transportation options by connecting this development to the rec path for circulation of both visitors and residents of the development. Maintaining the community character and design quality. One of the things that this proposal includes is having more consolidated development and not having a massive tract development on that hillside. And they're also proposing a complete neighborhood where residents would be able to walk to various amenities in the village core rather than having to make an additional trip to either the base area or to town for those particular services. Are there any questions on alignment with the 2007 plan? Any applicant notes on this? Okay, great.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I have a question. Will we be discussing commercial use? Any other,
Yes, happy to.
is that coming up in some other slides?
I forget all the order of my slides you're going through right now. That was generally intended to be part of that tract level conversation. So
Okay.
if you'd like to dive into that now, I think that would be appropriate.
Um,
So let's.
Yeah, I guess I would say promote economic sustainability with commercial uses. The proposed commercial square footage is 90,000. That's equivalent to what we currently have in the base area. And I'm not seeing that that is sustainable.
I'll let the applicant speak to that.
Okay.
So we have narrowed the uses down per the request so that whatever of the 90,000 is viable, looking at a restaurant, a bar, a little community market, coffee shop, a shipping center, salon, offices, fitness center. On tract 11, we have a community center. The idea, I think, it's very unlikely you have this standalone theater, but you have this community center that can be everything from weddings to an event, right? A music event, whatever. I mean, that's probably like 15,000 square feet, right? And then you have a restaurant and it's 5,000, and like you can creep up on that amount. It doesn't mean we're definitely going to build 90,000 square feet. And so that's the current allocation. And what we really tried to do was listen carefully to what was going to support and complement the base area. So I think trying to think about it, moving away from this, like, here's the quantity, you're definitely going to build 90,000, I'm concerned it's like never going to be filled. So that whole idea that we started with early on, where we wanted curated space in there, now we're saying, here are the uses that are going to go into that curated space. And so for us, we want to really focus on that. If you look at the ground level of the footprints in the tracks that allow commercial, they equal 90,000 square feet. So will we maybe put residential in some of those ground floor spaces? Sure.
Well, I would say we have 93,000 in the base area. And a good component of it right now is associated with hotels and ski rentals and things like that. The retail portion is about 24,000. But we're still not able to activate that. We have a lot of empty spaces. So 90,000 is a big number that when we were seeing already in the base area, that it's really not working. And I think one of the things that the community had, at least in the community survey that we've had, is the number one or number two desire is to increase the vibrancy of the downtown area. And, I think we've talked about this before, is that the potential competition with what's going on down in the base area with this 90,000 proposed commercial area is very concerning. I don't know, maybe we could do a phased where in phase two, when the building starts and we start discussing commercial, maybe we would say, well, we're only going to do or approve half of that. And then in phase three, as things really kick in and we've got a lot of residential, and yes, there's really a need, we see a real need, then maybe phase three, we would put in the additional 45,000. But I would hate to see, all of this commercial space be built initially and then it just sits there.
So there's a phasing plan included,
Mhm.
and I'd have to flip to it and I could just
I think
on
is
the fly
Rumble
give
is
you the square
two.
footage. Sorry.
Yeah, is Rumble is phase two.
That's
I
right.
think, yeah, and then phase three is the residential. But that 90,000, it doesn't include the Rumble. I think the total commercial is 134,000. Yeah,
90,000 is this allocated, offices,
Offices,
business,
right.
professional, a community center, visitor center, civic space, and Rumble are above and beyond the 90,000. I think, we're where we want to be in terms of this space and, have really narrowed down what we see the uses that are going to be complementary. So I think we're pretty secure in our proposal. So I guess it's up to you guys to decide if that's a stake in the ground that, you can't get past.
yeah. I don't know if any other commissioners have anything to say about that or not.
I just want to add some insight, if you will, with regard to the commercial component. And again, as y'all are aware, we are going through the master planning process. So I just want to share some of the feedback we've received so far with regards to commercial uses specifically within the base area. And the feedback that we had received through working through our goals and policies for the master plan indicates that the types of commercial uses that would be complementary to the base area are going to continue to be more of those base area and tourist type uses. And the uses that are more community essential services such as a post office, a grocery store, office space, and the types of uses that are being proposed within this project we're receiving direction that those uses aren't necessarily compatible within a base area because of the cost of real estate in those areas. And if they're redeveloping them, they want it to be more tourist serving and not necessarily that neighborhood commercial. Will there be restaurants? Yes. Will there be for coffee shops? Yes. But in terms of those other neighborhood commercial uses, we're hearing that that's something that isn't entirely appropriate for the base area in the commercial core. So they're going to be a commercial core when I'm talking about that. So Treasury, Snowmass, Gothic, up to the base area would generally be in the redevelopment scenario be used for more tourist serving type uses.
And this is with the stakeholders or the
This is with the steering committee.
the steering
And this
committee?
is also with the base area owners group that we had met with, that in their discussions of potentially redeveloping this area, that those types of uses would likely not be able to frankly afford to be in the base area. With some of the feedback we've received.
There's certain types of businesses that wouldn't want to mix. One example that comes to mind, dog grooming, for example. If someone had a dog grooming business, I gotta take my dog, get him clean. I wouldn't, if there was a place, say, in the North Village, or let's flip that, say it was in the base area in the middle of the winter, I wouldn't want to deal with the parking at the base area, the traffic, both physical in the people sense and the actual car sense to get my dog to the groomer. Whereas a resident of this community, or what we were calling a residential essential type service, it's been determined through these discussions that maybe a more appropriate use for things such as that would be outside of that commercial part of the base.
I also think that if some of these planning principles of commercial, lower level, residential, upper level, I mean, it's all gonna be done by private development, and a developer is not gonna go in and build a bunch of commercial space that is not gonna get rented. So I think the market will support as the density grows and address that concern that you have.
So market phasing, if you will.
Mhm.
Very much so. Yeah, we're not gonna go out and just throw a 90,000 foot mall out there and hope everybody shows up. It's-
Well, I would hope not.
It's definitely, these are, as Heather said, it's a curated process, and most likely, most of these things will be built to suit. As we get a group of tenants that wants this type of product, then we'll tailor the design of the building and the circulation of the building and everything to accommodate those things, and then have that, and then build to those uses. We're not, the plan is not to go out and build a big vacant building for sure.
And is there anything in there that says that we're not gonna have like national retail chains, that we're only gonna limit the commercial to